Welcome to my swamp. I'm originally from Chicago, but I've been here, yeah, BZ in the house. Is there a clicker or whatever for me?
I think this might be a clicker.
Does it work? Ooh, that one. How are y'all? So I have a survey that I made, but I think we're a little backed up. We'll send it out because I'm kind of curious some of the questions. But if we have time at the end, and hopefully we will, we can ask them because I'm curious how you guys are adapting to this strange, newish, not newish world of generative AI. And then at the end of this, I've got 5 or 6 pages of tips and stuff from different journalism organizations across the globe on how they're adapting to AI, and then also a bunch of the different policies that a bunch of them, like what Wired just came out with their AI policy, AP did, but right after they signed a contract with that 2-year contract with ChatGPT. Yeah, they're all over the map. Do any of your newsrooms have AI policies?
Our policies don't.
Yeah.
No AI at all. Yeah.
But wait, do you use any transcription service?
Yeah.
So that's AI. This is where you got to define it. And so I'm a Wired magazine contributor, and it's kind of my editor there, who would always like correct my copy and be like, no, it's, put more words in. And I'm like, what? Strunken White said, omit needless words. But he's like, these are not needless. But I think that's where everyone, like us in the media, when we talk about AI, we're confusing it a little bit, because as I kind of learned doing this, the first AI paper was written by Turing in 1950. So like, yes, there are new things, but we'll get there. So yeah, this was right after Speaker McCarthy became Speaker McCarthy. Hannity took over an entire room like this size, right off the House floor. And the crazy thing about it was there was like, 50, 60 chairs set up, and it was a bunch of, like, all these House Republicans sat in back. And I'm like, wait, you're lawmakers, you're policymakers, and you're just being a prop for this TV program? It is a strange new world, but I do miss George. So yeah, I do a little teaching on the side. Hopkins, where I got my master's, I teach in our government and public policy program, our MA program here. So I teach like history of the media with an eye towards how politicians and the press corps have adapted to new mediums over time, whether the Telegram, TikTok, whatever. And then I've also taught journalism at a few schools, Boston University, UMD, and GW. This geeks me out. So I'm a Wired contributor, and I stumbled across who knows what Section 230 is? Yeah, data privacy. So my data privacy coverage for Wired was quoted in like 20 plus law reviews from like all these like top schools. It's not because I'm great or brilliant. It's because nobody else was covering it. And so just one big article on data privacy 5, 6 years ago just blew up within this, the legal community, and it hasn't trickled down to Capitol Hill. Like, in this new internet era, which we've had for 15 years now, Congress has done nothing. And now that generative AI is here, pardon my French, they're shitting themselves, because what can you do with generative AI? Because our data is a commodity, and that's how it's set up, you take all of our data, plug it right in, and so what, Cambridge Analytica? Goodbye. Like, that wouldn't even be a scandal these days. But that's what I'm really worried about. Not so much the deepfakes going into the election, but how those deepfakes are going to be micro-targeted to vulnerable communities and under the radar. So watch out for that in your communities. So then I've been a contributor at Vice, Rolling Stone, Playboy, Vice News Tonight, Daily Beast. I've got my own wire service where I've covered Congress for like 60 plus local NPR stations over the years. So I've probably worked for you all at some point. But then I also have done work with Willamette Weekly, Mississippi Today, Fast Company. Like Fast Company they were doing a profile on Katie Porter, and they pinged me to like check out this rumor. I debunked the rumor, and boom, their feature went out. So all that, but here's the point. I'm a failure. I'm a political reporter in 2024, and on my watch, I've been here 18 years, so I kind of feel ownership of it. I call Congress my wayward kids. But like we've seen trust in the media kind of evaporate, at least with half the population. So yeah, I'm not very proud of what has become of this great experiment. Before I hop in, it's going to be politics stuff as the backdrop. The AI stuff, with generative AI, think of it as a mirror, because it's literally just mining our recent past. And I think that's what we're fucked. Because hanging out in the Capitol and what being there January 6th, which I'll get into, like knowing that generative AI is going to be a reflection of our society should terrify us all. The nuclear stuff, blah, 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 que sera, sera. I told my mom, like, hey, if Washington gets hit, I work at the Capitol, like, I'm not going to feel a thing. She doesn't like that. Neither did my one intern's parents, and then I realized I can never say that one again to the intern's parents. Speaking of which, my 2 new interns this week are for the summer, Caroline and AnaBelle. Thank you all. So yeah, I'm in decent company because we're all failures, like us East Coast elitists, in whatever this media thing is. But look at this, 50% of Americans feel that most national news organizations intend to mislead them. Like, how do we survive as a society? Like this little democracy or republic playing a democracy. Yeah, that just terrifies me. Like literally keeps me up awake at night. And that's something we all, I think, a lot of us, the temptation is to, cleave to our natural audience or whatever. But no, we should be trying to expand it and broaden that conversation and win back a lot of those folks. It's not in here, but I saw Jake Tapper lost 25% of his viewership after the 2022 midterms. And what have they changed? Nothing. And I'm like, you guys are fools, because you're alienating such a large swath of the American public. And no, I do not accept a nation where it's you half and you half. No, we're America, the United States. So yeah, shame on us. We squandered our shot. I'm ashamed, unsettled, and terrified, if I'm honest. So yeah, we got a lot to clean up. And so I did my MA thesis on the increase in partisanship from the 80s, like late 70s on, with an eye towards filibuster reform, urging Democrats not to do it. And then Harry Reid deployed the filibuster, and here we are in the fallout. But these days, I don't think the problem is hyper-partisanship. We literally have lawmakers living in 2 different universes. They're not disagreeing with each other. They're not talking to each other. And that's what really worries me. And yeah, they raised their millions and millions of dollars. This is why MTG is such a headache to her leaders, why AOC is such a headache to her leaders. Because yeah, it's politically profitable to tap into that rage. And like, hell, there's a lot of reason for rage. You know, Congress, what their approval rating for years has been like 12, 15. And then even these days, they work 3 days a week. Like, yeah, throw them all out. But yeah. So yeah, to hammer this point home, I started asking, this time last year, I was asking Democratic leadership. I think I mixed up these slides. Well, yeah, top Dems had never heard of Moms for Liberty. You guys probably are dealing with it on a local level in a lot of spots. But look, Cory Booker, this time last year, never heard of them. Should I have heard of them? I originally thought you said Bombs for Liberty. Gary Peters, who is the chair of the Senate Homeland Security Committee, and FBI and these Southern Poverty Law Centers say, hey, these are hate groups. He had never heard of them. Who are they? He's also heading up the Democrats' campaign arm, and he never heard of them. Again, 2 different universes. Elizabeth Warren, she's a professor, so this was like her being like, I know I should have this, but no, you failed, Senator. And then Pete Aguilar, who was on the January 6th committee. And it was like number 3 or something in House leadership. Didn't know of them. Hopefully they do now. But my friends in HYY, where I used to work, they were all over it. You know, you got protesters on the ground. And I think that was the 3rd day of the protests. So they were energized. And yet somehow in this Washington bubble, Democratic leaders didn't know what their revved up base was doing on the ground, which is a huge problem. But then also, who was speaking at it? Former president. And this was when they were all running for president. And still, again, completely different news diets, or yeah, they just live in different universes. So yeah, at the end of that piece, Rashida Tlaib, she freaking knew who they were. Because what does she say? Moms for Liberty is going for my Muslim conservative neighbors, and they're winning. And that's what freaked her out, that they were effective. That hate was resonating with some of her friends and neighbors. Then Lois Frankel, who used to be mayor of West Palm Beach. This is interesting because she kind of catches herself. They've been putting in a lot of harm, talking about Moms for Liberty, but then she stops herself. First of all, I do appreciate when parents are involved with kids' schools. Like, moms, you know? And then when you go and like talk to Republicans or whatever about them, they're like, what are you talking about? These are mothers. That's what Senator Rick Scott tells me. He's like, oh, they're great. But then I'm like, wait, did you read the Southern Poverty Law report on them? And it's like, no, they're lefty wackos. I don't read their stuff. And it's like, stop being ostriches, y'all. So yeah, after she says that, then she goes, everyone has to care, and it's going to take all of us to defeat these extremists, right-wing trends. People need to speak up. But they didn't. What do we see? Them expanding, again, on your guys' local turf. They're now in, since those interviews, they're now in 4 more states, including 1 battleground one, and they've got $3 million that they're planning to drop in this election, which is not unformidable, except this is going to be a $1 billion election because we're a disgusting nation. Tlaib, just because they say they're moms doesn't mean they can't be racist or homophobic. They're a group to very much pay attention to. The name is misleading, but the actions are very clear. It's like, hey, call your office. Like, that's your party that doesn't know them. So yeah, now into the J6 universe. This was a piece in the LA Times around the anniversary of J6 at the start of this year. And they profiled to Senator Bozeman from Arkansas, her story of that day, Norma Torres from Cali, and then somehow they threw me in there. And it's interesting, because it was COVID lockdowns around January 6th. For one, all of us reporters weren't able to just go to our watering hole and like cry or curse together. And so, same with lawmakers. So I hadn't heard a lot of these stories, and then I hadn't, like, reading it, I was like, oh shit, that happened. Anyway. Oh yeah, so that's my video of the breach. I don't think we can. Oh, fuck off. That's what I didn't want to do.
Oh, that might. Oh. I'll stay there.
So the crazy thing about this, so I'm right off the Senate floor, by where like Pence and all them are, and you couldn't actually see them break the first window, but you could feel the reverberation once they were inside, because it's marble. So you could just feel these screams, and that was pretty terrifying. Can you go back to the slideshow? But then it's interesting, because I had to like sign an affidavit for the FBI for like 200 or so of my photos and videos from that day to for them to be used in all the court cases, because they didn't want each lawyer to be like, hey, who's this Matt Laslo guy? He's a liar. And so then Capitol Police had me sign the affidavit, and then FBI did as well.
Were you there? Was that your video?
Yeah, that's my office.
How did you more personal safety things? Were you?
I forgot it, but when I got home that night, I put my hand in my pocket and I was like, what is this? This was the start of that day. This was the doorstop for the Senate Radio TV gallery. Ended that day, it was my shank. It was pointy. And then I also took a wrench from CNN folks. So I had a wrench in one pocket and a shank in another. It sucks. I cut off Pence's head. Whatever. But yeah, I didn't have a ton to do that day. It was just like, all right, let's just go, see what happens. It's history. And so I just fuck around, you know? I put on my Wu-Tang mask before Pence comes in, take my selfie. And then what I love about this picture is Pence, because I used to cover him when he was in the House. He's just looking right at me so resolutely, like he knows what's going down. Like he knows he's gonna stand up. And I was quasi-clueless. So yeah, some of you know I gave the tour to the Capitol too. So this is right off the Senate floor. And again, I've been there, I think 15 years at that time. And like, I'm not a Pulitzer winner, but when the Secret Service, 4 of them huddle here and look out the windows, I'm like, what are they looking at? Because you never see a Secret Service detail break up. There's always a unit. And on the other side, by McConnell's office, there were 4 there, and then there was another group of 4, and I was like, what is going on? So then I look out, and you could see some smoke. This was before they breached up here. Yeah. And these were just like officers coming, just keeled over, like getting their eyes rinsed out, just like rolling on the ground. There's a bunch of videos of it. And I remember one of my tweets was, you see smoke, the Capitol's shaking, but the police aren't freaking out. So I'm like, there's percussion bombs or whatever going off, but it was just confusion. And it was actually not until the January 6th committee. Like, so you saw that video of mine, I was over here, this photographer, Greg Nash, he was here. Once someone threw the bottle at us, he's like, I'm out. And then I stuck around. But then like for a year or whatever, I was like, did I make that up about the bottle? But then I was shown during the J6 hearing. I was like, I knew that happened. So yeah, what do you mean there was an insurrection? What do you mean there was a riot? This is us. I told some of you all this. This was the Fox, it was actually a Fox News producer who had a panic attack in the radio TV gallery. It was kind of like the most beautiful thing. Well, because he was comforted by MSNBC producers. And so it was like, this beautiful mindfuck, and it's also like, why do you guys both lie to your audiences? Like, you guys ratchet all this stuff up. And so I just told him, well, because for Vice I covered the Proud Boys, and like they know me, and turned on me and like didn't like me around the election. So I'm like, fuck, these people are in my office. They know what I look like. They don't like me. So I just told him, like, hey, whatever you do, I'll do. If you need to get out, I'll go with you, because I wanted to get the heck out. I just couldn't verbalize it. And I'll never forget, and I'm like still blown away. They took us through the first floor, and we didn't have, because who likes the press? So of course there were no gas masks or emergency escape hoods in the radio TV gallery. So actually I went down with Caitlin Kim from Colorado Public Radio to look for some and bring them up to folks. And there's always like undercover cops on the Capitol grounds. And so when I put my head out at this like security checkpoint, my gut, like, I was like, awesome, Capitol Police got this. Like, their undercover is amazing. They got MAGA hats on, they got flagpoles, like, don't tread on me. And then like half a second later, I'm like, oh shit, that is not Capitol Police. They have fled, because they were down the floor below protecting the senators. Well, so they run us through, like, it was just a raging battle. This is the second window that they breached. The first one was over here. This many officers at that window. And then on this wall, it's like 50 officers who look like they just played like 2 World Cup games. Some getting their eyes washed out, like heroes. And then, yeah, they're like, what do you mean there was no insurrection? Like, what are you talking about? A militia, or no, 5 militias came, because you had like Department of Energy. I think Washington, we have the most police forces in the world, because like Department of Education has its own police force, you know, park police, ... And so I think these were DHS, but it's almost more unsettling to see them come in like full combat gear. Okay, sirrah. But yeah, so then covering the January 6th hearings, everyone was saying in the lead up that they were comparing it to Watergate. And I was like, wait, that doesn't make sense, because I don't think they'd even be able to hit that 67 vote threshold. I was like, I don't even think there's going to be that many Republicans who are going to tune in. So I interviewed all 50 Senate Republicans, and my gut was right. All the other headlines are wrong. It's nothing like Watergate. Only 8 Republican senators were even going to maybe tune in to the January 6th hearing. So again, was this reality? Or was this fake? Because now the Republicans control the House. What insurrection? And actually, I've covered drug policy and stuff for all the fun outlets, Rolling Stone, Playboy, and all them. But I've never been to DC's jail. I've heard atrocious stories about it, but just never went. And I was WAMU's correspondent. Just, yeah, my 15 years at that point had never been. First time I went to DC's jail was with MTG. But for her to advocate for the J6 prisoner, or hostages, or whatever they call them. And she invited, Democrats kind of like trying to call her bluff, but like, I might do a feature for Washingtonian magazine, a profile of MTG. She is the loudest voice for prison reform in this Congress. And like, I've asked that to Ayanna Pressley, Jamal Bowman, and Senator Ossoff from Georgia. And they're all kind of like, that's right. That's right. She's the only one who's talked about how atrocious American prisons are, like how inhumane they are. And yet, she's doing it for very different reasons. But I'm like, guys, she's right. Like, we are worse than third world countries with our prisons. But, yeah, so again, it's just 2 different universes. I say like the Capitol is its own universe, but then within that Capitol, House and Senate, especially because Democrats control one and Republicans control the other, again, there's no dialogue. But yeah, this young lady was right, I believe. Alternative facts, we all laughed it off in 2016 or whatever. I don't know if she was a prophet or whatever, but they are here. And there's some books I have over there. Some are part of my study on propaganda and stuff. And yeah, half of those books are pro, and the other half are anti. Because I read broadly. But yeah, basically under Donald Trump, he was kind of the realization of what Rush Limbaugh, Newt Gingrich, the GOP had been taking baby steps, politely knocking away trust in the media, the MSM, blah, blah, blah. Trump comes in with a sledgehammer and realizes it, Republicans now do not need to even speak our language because they realize they can go straight over our heads. They become the first-person storytellers on Capitol Hill. But yeah, chaos in the wake. But actually, yeah, all my accolades. You can't mention those in my Republican circles. Because, you're an expert? I'm dubious of you, gatekeeper. It's just a different world. But also, this is where I think us and the media need to, and I hate that term, the media. I always tell people be precise. Rolling Stone didn't mess up. Matt Laslo did, call out individual reporters. But yeah, hearing the Jake Tappers of the world sit there and fact check people, or fact check the former president live, I'm that is why you lost 25% of your audience. And the Independent is no, you were twisting the story. But yeah, that's why I'm also worried this election cycle that we're not hearing, it's kind of the backlash from 2016 when it was just a 24/7 Trump show. And what is it? Former Congressman David Jolly, who's an MSNBC analyst, he was I was in the green room at MSNBC and Hillary Clinton would come on. No one would maybe watch a little bit. No one would move. When Trump came on, all the liberals in the MSNBC green room would stop what they were doing and just be fixated on Trump. Love or hate the guy, he's a master communicator. And since he came down that elevator, he's been the center of our political universe. But yeah, I think a lot of this comes up a little later, but us calling we're fact-based. That's a very political term. And I think we need to stay away from that stuff as much as possible if we ever want to have a conversation with that half. And I have a conversation with that half every day because they're my sources. Yeah, I say my job as a political reporter is to get lawmakers to fuck up and tell me what they're actually thinking. And at GW, I taught their MA program. I call it MA in BS, but it's their MA in public relations or comms. So in one of my courses, I had the political director for MoveOn.org and a Trump press secretary. It was the first day of class. I always slam the door shut. And I say, politics, stay out there. But I think that's where we're lacking, that detachment. Yeah, this one. Yeah, so I know a lot of your stations. Does NPR National? I think they use fact-based too. This is a Neiman Labs article that I stumbled across, and I was like, wait, I wanted to write that. I've done op-eds for Reuters and Guardian, or I've been an op-ed contributor for Reuters, Guardian, and then NBC Think. Because my editor from The Guardian went to NBC Think, but every piece I did for NBC Think was really hard on liberals, just because the peacock. But yeah, politicians now, this was during COVID, so their staffs weren't around. But what do we have here? Potentially future governor of Virginia, Rob Whitman, congressman, recording a video for now the head of the NRCC, the Republican Campaign Committee, Richard Hudson. Here we got Louis Gohmert, Texas's finest, former judge, just sitting there. They had like 3 cameras taking shots. Here, I think this is Vargas from Cali. His staffers like teaching him how to like hold so he can do his own live stream. But yeah, the whole building in like the politics industry in this town is disgusting. And like I knock myself again. We, there's so much promise with new media, transparency, all that. And like maybe it's been realized sometimes in some spots. This is where I vacillate a lot between conflicting opinions in my head. But wow, like looking at me and my buddy, it's like, oh, I got my 33,000 followers on Twitter. Like it just became this vanity thing for us. Like, oh, Acosta got his book deal. For what? Doing really shitty journalism, just yelling at the president. We're not fake news. Shut up and sit down. How did you prove that you're not fake news? You don't do it like you do on the playground in preschool. No, you do the basics. Don't make mistakes. Do good investigation, do unimpeachable work. Yeah, does transparency matter? Like, there has been some amazing reporting in the past few years. My buddy Wes Lowry, a god amongst mortals. Check out his new, or he's in that new police documentary on Netflix for the work him and the Post did on policing and BLM and all that. Even CNN, who I'm highly critical of, they hired, they spent their Trump bucks, as their VPs called it back in 2016, but they like hired Andrew K-File or whatever. So they have a stout investigative unit. You would never know that from watching CNN. Like they put out amazing stuff on their website that never makes it to air because whenever possible, they want to be a 24/7 infomercial for Trump, at least when he's in trial. But yeah, I call it the media industrial complex, which MTG now quotes. She's like, Professor Laslo, tell me more about this media. Or she's like, are you a member of the media industrial complex? I'm like, oh shit, why did I start? But yeah, so what? Phil Mattingly, he wins the White House Correspondents Association Award for doing stand-ups. Like, I guess I got an award for stand-ups. Like, I'm not proud of it. It's not on my resume. Maybe it is way below. But that's where, even like these days, when I look at us like throwing these parties for ourselves, I'm like, how dare you? Like, what do we have to celebrate? Like, I get when there's focus on Evan, who's locked up, the Wall Street Journal guy, and stuff like that, and like scholarships for interns. But why are we popping bubbly? We've got work to do, a lot of it. But this is, oh yeah. And so then Jake Tapper wins one for the Steele dossier. He gets this big award, and this is from the AP. The so-called Steele dossier that have since been largely discredited. So, like, what are you doing? We are playing into Republican talking points. And especially because, I didn't know this till the past couple of days. He was a press secretary for a Democrat. Stephanopoulos worked for Clinton. Like, the criticisms from Republicans aren't wildly inaccurate. There's a lot of freaking Democrats who get slid into the media industrial complex, especially at the TV level, and seeing like Jen Psaki just like do a year or whatever with Biden and then like, go to make millions. No respect. This is a big thing they fight for. And I'm actually kind of curious your guys' thoughts. I love me some C-SPAN. I used to fall asleep to Supreme Court cases, listening to the audio. But then I had to stop because I would be up all night taking notes. I play a nerd for living. But this is their big fight. And like you always hear Wolf Blitzer bringing it up, like, we need cameras. No, Wolf, we don't. Like one of the last sacred spaces that you guys haven't tainted yet is the Supreme Court. And like, they're doing fine tainting themselves. Like, all we need is TMZ up in there. TMZ's at the Capitol these days, which is new in the past like 5 or so years. I digress. So this is a Jefferson biographer, PhD from UVA. His book, Jefferson and the Press, Crucible Liberty. But yeah, I call this the new era of pop politics. And we do share some of that blame. What he says, describing kind of the election of 1800, Adams versus Jefferson. Newspapers should be, or should not be regarded as mere chroniclers or recorders at the time, but rather as reflections of the culture of which they were a part, and possibly as actors in the unfolding drama. I disagree with him only on that. I studied philosophy in my undergrad, and yeah, I think we're, like the whole idea of play with Gadamer and Heidegger and them, like I think we are a part of it, and I think we're kind of getting punished for that becoming very evident, like the way we were using social media when it was first out. Like, I actually tweet a lot of things that I would tell my interns not to, but that's like, I would also tell you guys not to do op-eds. But because I wear the 2 caps, I kind of push that envelope. While when people call me out for it, I'm like, you're right. No, a reporter shouldn't be saying that, but sorry, I read more than your boss. But yeah, so we're this pop political nation. Look at this, and just slowly declining. Like, for one, Congress and government, the White House have made themselves slowly irrelevant. Because look at that, 66, close to 70 million viewers. Like, they were doing flips when Biden got this uptick. TV ratings, State of the Union. And of course, yeah, got to do the Hollywood Reporter one, because this is today's politics. But State of the Union draws 32 million, up double digits. Between like those numbers and then how few Americans actually vote, or pardon me, the tens of millions of Americans who don't vote each year, just kind of shows how irrelevant our political classes, and I would include reporters in there as well. But boom, oh, I forgot the number. This, what was it, like 160 or 100, maybe 120 million tuned in for this? I mean, because it was the perfect trifecta. T Swift, Super Bowl, and commercials. So yeah, I get it, America. I'm gonna tune in as well. But also, eat your veggies. Watch the State of the Union. So like my main lecture that I give 5 to 10 times a year is like a history of the media, again with an eye towards technology. And this is the front slide of it, lights, cameras, memes. I have a few from there that's where I've given the lecture. But I always start it with this, and not just because I studied to be a pastor and I've given sermons in a past life. But yeah, Solomon, what has been will be again. What has been done will be done again. There's nothing new under the sun. I think we fall into this trap, the fallacy of the Golden Age fallacy, that at some point in our history, lions were laying down with lambs. No, we are a nation that was birthed out of a bloody revolution. And that revolutionary spirit is still very evident in us. So yeah, this is Willard Stern Randall. In the first knockdown dragout, so this is election 1800. In the first knockdown dragout campaign, Americans proved they preferred newspapers to pamphlets, to books, and further, that they preferred their newspapers crammed with items of scandal. It was the first modern campaign. So, you know, I even critique myself a little. Wait, is this the era of pop politics? Like Reagan, he was a movie star. So again, that's where, especially because our politicians don't read, engaging with history is powerful. But like, guys, it was freaking nasty back then. Here's 1800, prediction. From Yale's president in a sermon. If Jefferson wins, murder, robbery, rape, adultery, incest will be openly taught. You think today's groomer accusations are bad? The air will be rent with the cries of the distressed. The soil will be soaked with blood, and the nation black with crimes. Damn! They could write ads today. Voters were attacked too. Adam's grandson said every dissolute intriguer, loose liver, forager, false coiner, and prison bird, every harebrained, loud-talking demagogue, every speculator, scoffer, and atheist was a follower of Jefferson. Like, that's nasty, circa 1800. But like, they went really freaking low. Jefferson Ally wrote that Adams was a hideous hermaphroditical character with neither the force and firmness of a man nor the gentleness and sensibility of a woman. Like, ooh, sick burn, dude. But even the First Lady weighed in. Martha Washington. Jefferson is one of the most detestable of mankind. Who is it? I think this author, Frank Luther Mott, another Virginia guy, he says that Jefferson was the most vilified president in American history, with the possible exception of Abraham Lincoln. That's what this PhD argues. Lincoln was assassinated. He oversaw the Civil War, and yet this Virginia scholar says the election of 1800 was probably the worst and nastiest. Again, Washington, he's got like the huge phallic monument just a few miles from here, who like in civics classes growing up were taught like, oh, he's this godlike figure. No. Thomas Paine wrote, Washington was treacherous in private friendship and a hypocrite in public life. He asked if Washington was an apostate, an imposter, whether you have abandoned good principles or whether you ever had any. Read him. So I love this. This is the door to the House of Representatives. And yeah, I know you're not allowed to take pictures in that part of the Capitol, but I love it. Because whenever guests are there, the doors are always open, usually. It's one of the coolest things. But yeah, so this is Pulitzer winner Ron Chernow. The revolutionary spirit lives on. People who spearhead revolutions tend to be outspoken and courageous, spurred on by a keen taste for combat. After sharpening their verbal skills, hurling polemics against the British crown, the founding generation then directed those energies against each other during the tumultuous first decade of the federal government. The passions of a revolution cannot simply be turned off like a spigot. And I think, again, that revolutionary, warring, self-righteous, like it's what kind of makes America beautiful and makes us a little detestable. But, hey, y'all, we got it pretty easy compared to our those who came before. Yeah, Frank Luther Mott, he calls that period the dark ages of American journalism. It's defined by personal attacks. Journalists faced duels, canings, beating in the streets, constant abuse from opposition printers. In the Capitol, we weren't able to go there, put off the House floor, but I was walking with Nancy Mace one day, and she, coming down the stairs on this white marble, she goes, you know that's blood? I was like, what? She's like, yeah, that's where I think the congressman shot a reporter because he was having an affair with his wife or something, and the blood's still there. I was like, what? That was a good head fake, ma'am. So yeah, I asked, what are the only two eras in the media that matter? BT and AT, before Trump and after Trump. Again, since he came down that escalator, he has been, for better and for worse, the focal point in politics. Even when he's not there, his presence is felt. Like, what, Biden in new media? What? they're like the only thing that stands out to me is like, oh, he was working to ban TikTok, and then now he's using TikTok. I'm like, all right, that's interesting. And then they've got an ad out because they're trying to hire a meme manager for $85,000, like to do a facelift and stuff. It's like, wait, you recognize there's a problem with your image. It's not you. You look in the mirror. Que sera, sera. But yeah, what bully pulpit does Biden have, or does he employ? Right now, he's outspending Trump and Trump's team 2-1 in all these key states, and Trump's still winning in all the key. And I hate polls, and they're imprecise and terrible, and we ask the wrong questions, and we in the media talk about them wrong, because no, Trump was not down 3 points to Hillary. That was in the margin of error. That 3 to 5 points? No. We shouldn't say, we should include that and say it's a statistical tie. That's where we're too lazy. But again, it's that political industrial complex where it's just accepted, and even the pollsters who we interview each year, they know that, but that's not what they focus on, because they want us to interview them. But here, case in point. During the Trump trial, I think it was Michael Cohen was testifying. I like, wait, did I hear that wrong? On WAMU in the shower, like, he's not doing 100% tariff on EVs, but no, he is. And guess what? He does a Rose Garden presser May 14th. Oh, MSNBC. So I always just like flip between the cable BS and the other BS. But they never cut to the President of the United States giving an address in the Rose Garden. Again, think back to 2016. If Trump had big rigs at the White House, boom, cameras, they're going live with it. When he had the NASCAR folks, like anything Trump did, there was cameras and it was live. Not the case at all with Biden. And then Stormy Daniels Day. So I used to, Chris Hayes used to be the editor for The Nation here in DC, and we worked out of the same building. So we're buddies. And I texted him the night of the Stormy Daniels stuff. I was like, bro, you guys didn't mention the President of the United States once. Like, there's no segment on it. It was just 55 minutes of Trump. And then he's like, dude, we had a Rafa segment, 5 minutes at the end. They devoted to Rafa. And yeah, his point was like, this is a big deal, former president. This is historic. And I'm like, yeah, I'll give you that. But then I told him what I told you all earlier. I'm like, dude, at the US Capitol, January 6th did not happen. Like, the feeling is it didn't happen. Like, it's just a different universe. And when we, as the media or whatever, continue this pop coverage where, we're basically doing tabloid coverage round the clock of Trump, because then that'll come up later. But yeah, CNN, they also skipped President Biden's speech. But what did they do? They cut to our friend in the Rose Garden to sum up the President of the United States in an era where half the nation thinks us in the press corps are lying to them. Instead of having the president talk to his constituents, they decide to sum up the President of the United States, which is just insanity. Except it's reality. Wait, is that the... So yeah, again, 2016 hit a record low, according to Gallup, America's trusted mass media. Hit another record in 2020. Share of Americans with no confidence in the news media surpass that of people with at least some confidence. Like, what are we doing wrong? It seems like a lot from that. And then, yeah, this year, it's just 2 points away from the record low. It's just so troubling. Partisan, yeah, it is. There are partisan elements of it, but the numbers are pretty large with, like what I called out Brian Schatz, because a few years back, Bernie Sanders was railing on the media. It could have been 16. And I was like, dude, he's sounding a lot like Trump. Then Senator Schatz from Hawaii got all offended. But I was like, what? You guys treat us like a piñata too when it's, according to your, when it's advantageous for you in that moment. But I'm like, do you guys know that you're helping tear the country apart and helping destroy that with those last slivers of trust? So my buddy Dave Weigel, I don't get invited to the fancy events, but Dave Weigel, who used to be Washington Post, now he's Semaphore, 2016, he told this to my students at Hopkins. 2016, like, he gets invited to this big CNN party, and he's there every 4 years for this party, and he goes, wait, this is like really nice. It's never been this nice. And one of the CNN VPs goes, oh, we're just spending our Trump bucks. So that's what they called them, their Trump bucks. Now, the president of CNN at the time, I forget his name, he had a good point on why they covered him so much as opposed to Jeb and all them. He was like, there was one point in the campaign where for a month, Jeb Bush and Rubio wouldn't call us back at all, but then Trump would like call in, you know? And they're like, he was so accessible and people watched it. So I'm like, all right, I can't totally knock you for that, but I completely knock them for doing this 24/7 infomercial for Trump. Look at this. Trump writes something on a Post-it and handed it to Bove. Trump then leaned in to say something to him. Bove writes a note back to Trump. That's fucking news? Like, how do y'all live with yourselves? But they make millions, and so they're happy, or whatever. Also, look, they had, I think that's like next slide. Oh yeah, so the only cable network, news network, or infotainment network to cover President Biden live in the Rose Garden was Fox. Yeah, which there was also only one network that didn't have special Trump trial graphics. It was not CNN, which was literally an infomercial, and you guys flew here, you probably saw CNN on the airport. I'm like, do you guys know you're just running commercials for Trump? Because so many people, even here in DC, like at bars or whatever, CNN's just on in the background. And so all they see is Trump, 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 Trump. Yeah. Oh, MSNBC, all hands on deck. All of our big names, we're gonna be there talking about Post-it notes? Like, I don't know what the president wrote on that, or former president wrote on that. Like, just silly season. Which again, I think plays in to the Republicans' rhetoric. They're not totally off. Who was it? Jon Stewart, he called out Democrats and he called out pundits for that. He's like, because everyone was like, oh, this is a solemn day. He's like, no. You guys are all giddy when Trump was indicted, which independents sense that. My Republican family and conservative family sense that. Yeah, but we don't in our little bubbles. Yeah, it was only Fox that didn't have special, like, big graphics or whatever. But again, it's Fox. It's actually funny. Do you guys remember that group Capital News Connection? Years ago, but I got my start working for them 18 years ago. My mentor in NPR is this guy, Chad Pergram, who's now Fox News is like senior producer at the Capitol, and he's on the air a couple times a day. We don't talk as much as we used to, because he knows I'm a media professor. I've asked him to come talk to my students, but he's like, no, the Fox overlords won't allow it. But yeah, I have a lot of questions for him. But then here, this is the minority leader. Oh, so this goes with some other stuff. So this is the minority leader, Hakeem Jeffries, walking through the Capitol. This is all the security detail. There's this one reporter for Politico. I got my question in, and then I took the picture. But like, boom, MTG. Yeah. And again, in their defense, that was the motion to vacate the speaker. So big, huge deal. But in my 18 years, I've never, like what? I was there for the MLB steroid, Major League Baseball steroid hearings. Huge circus clown show, not that big. We are in this era of pop politics. And look, like these days, when I look at a huge scrum like that, I'm like, all right, you guys are making the case for generative AI to take 80% of our jobs, 85% of our jobs. Yeah. You probably don't know any of these folks' names. Luna, Burchett, Eli Crane. But there's just this feeding frenzy for not news. Just little gossipy tidbits, which is why Manu at CNN gives me dirty eyes. But yeah, I think we squandered the promise of new media to, be transparent, to like bring people in, for one, to bring them into our lives and our offices. But no, now the question is, are we going to squander this opportunity with AI as well? So yeah, again, the future is yesterday. AI is not new. We should all be more precise with our language. The first AI machine, they say, there's some disagreement on it, but it's generally accepted that it was 1955. So yeah, this author, or these authors, they say the term AI, especially the intelligence part, is misleading because it implies similarity to human intelligence. Wrap up. What time does this go to? 3? Oh, tight. And pop out questions if you have them. But, so yeah, then there's the large language models. Let me actually pop through just fuck AI. It's boring. But this is something we have to watch out for. Like, we are basically fully owned by algorithms. We don't know it, we don't see it, but especially because our data is a commodity. We are known very intimately by a lot of companies, sometimes the FBI, being literally able to buy from third parties our data that the FBI can't get through a search warrant. But yeah, so now, New York Times, this is a fascinating piece. AI is literally just mimicking us. And so we might be going to a generative AI future where, again, we're not having a conversation. Because especially when you go to Google or whatever, go to a dictionary, if it tells you and like reinforces your thinking and your ideology, like we're screwed, right? So a lot of newsrooms are really jumping all in with AI. It's kind of interesting. Men's Journal is going back to all their archives, which could be interesting for some of your stations, because you guys have first drafts of history that are just sitting there, probably in old, like what, reel-to-reel or the old tape machines. So what did Men's Journal do? They just said, hey, let's just have AI go and repurpose all this stuff. CNET was having AI write stories for them, but then caught up with plagiarism. Palm Springs Post they're having AI cover local public meetings for them. Le Monde, they're translating everything with AI. And then they have professional translators overseeing it. But that could be interesting. Or friends from KPBS here. For some of the markets, that could be great for your audience. This is interesting. They're using AI to moderate comments. And you guys, I think they do it each year. I have the links and I can send these slides out to you all. But you guys can propose, I think they take 5 a year from small local newsrooms, where they want you to come up with an interesting AI idea, and then they help you implement it and stuff. This guy in Virginia, is he pushing AI past its limits? They have now a 100% AI written newsletter, which turned some heads. Then they hit some roadblocks. They tried thought of the day. Readers complained, it's nonsensical word salad, according to the founder. The writer for an image says the readers were unimpressed. Then they tried haiku of the day. Proven somewhat repetitive, even when you ask it to write something totally new. But then the big one, quote of the day. Hallucinations. It would often make up quotes and attribute them to well-known people. So again, now's a great time to experiment, push the envelope, but do not trust AI to publish something without humans going over it. It's interesting, I found this oldie but goodie from '99. It's kind of hilarious. 2 weeks ago, NPR, which itself relies on its member stations to finance its operations. Oh, really? Struck an internet deal with its largest affiliate, NPR. I love this. The two organizations, which already operate individual websites. So again, like, nothing new under the sun. This was like seismic, web 0.5. But we're now there. Yeah, again, adapt or die. The herds rush into the slaughter. This is where I think you all can really stand out. Enterprise pieces, but like don't mimic us in the Washington press corps. Do the opposite of what we're doing. Like we're terrible. Like big reason that 50% of the nation doesn't trust us. And actually, the polls are better for us. But no, the media industrial complex is killing America. But that's where enterprise. I think a lot of you small markets can totally collaborate in ways that NPR might not like. But who was it? When I was the correspondent for WLRN in Miami, Dan Gretsch, who came from Marketplace, his theory of local, I loved, because he's like, it doesn't have to be a local voice for my Florida delegation for it to matter. And so I was also the correspondent for Wyoming Public Radio. And so you would have Liz Cheney talking about oil and gas policy in a Miami feature because what they do with oil and gas and coal is the reason that Miami is getting flooded. So yes, that is very relevant to that audience. And I think that's where, like what me as a magazine feature writer, I'm always like reading, I'm also on the board of the Regional Reporters Association. I'm always reading the small local stuff. And then when I look like a genius, because I just connect the dots. I'm like, oh, there's a trend. But I think that's where you guys could really be powerful, collaborating with each other. In part, as a way to get around Google and their algorithms. Because we haven't even dealt with that problem. We're already getting slaughtered. And as these social media companies, which own Congress, basically, as they get fancy with AI, what are they doing? We're the last thought. And I kind of despise that. Google pays for everything, the Google News Initiative. I'm like, yes, I can't say no to your money, but I think you're evil in killing us. Like, but yeah, generative AI is scraping the past to present and even predict our future. So that's where we just gotta stay focused on moving the story forward. Like, if you're worried about going head to head with AI, read more, get a new profession. Like, no, AI's got nothing on us. Because what is AI doing? It's stealing the crappy stuff written by our peers. And sorry, I've written a lot of crappy stuff in the years. And some good stuff. But I like what Felix Simon says. The old survives alongside the new sometimes outlasting it because it proves more useful. And so, yeah, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. What matters most is fact-based. But no, just dotting our I's, crossing our T's. And yeah, your guys' voices. Like, on all these shows, they'll like play the AI, and I'm like, no, I can tell it's a fake. I know a human. But yeah, local news is the bright side. Again, I'll send these out. Are you guys part of INN? That's a great resource. But yeah, this site helps you detect fakes. There's a bunch of, actually, AP, do you guys know this? Journalism AI. Academy for Small Newsrooms. They got a newsletter that they put out on new trends and a lot of cool stuff on their site. Again, Google funded, and it seems like Google writes their press releases. Then, who's this? Yeah, there's just a lot of interesting stuff. I kind of spelled some of them out for you, but these are conversations your newsrooms should be having if they haven't already. But yeah, no one's monolithic. That's it. I got business cards over there. If you want, stay in touch. Thank you for your time. I always get depressed when I lecture on Congress.